welcome to our inaugural podcast, Control Alt Career, a podcast where we share stories of people who have taken a leap and embarked on an alternative career path in Asia. I'm your host, Jennifer Ong, and I'm very happy to have my friend Chris join us today. Chris Cheung is a restaurateur and has started multiple food and beverage concepts in Hong Kong, starting with Bread and Beast, a sandwich restaurant inspired by Hong Kong flavors. Later, he expanded into Kong, an Asian fusion dinner service. He's also recently opened Black Garlic, a grain bowl-based fast casual restaurant focused on servicing the office crowd. He's also started White Lemons, a B2B catering service focused on servicing gyms. Cool. Well, thanks, Chris, for your time and for joining us today. So my first question for you, I've known you for quite a while now, back in our days at Columbia University. I remember after graduation, you first started working at marketing at Unilever, first in the US and then moved to Shanghai. How did you go from that to starting Bread and Beast? Did you have any prior restaurant experience?
Zero operation experience in restaurants, but I think like many people who started restaurants, we were misguided in thinking that just because we've been to many restaurants and we've seen a lot and that we would know how to run a restaurant well. So that was, I think, one of the number one mistake that people start restaurants without a restaurant background. No, but I didn't think about opening a restaurant right after Unilever. I actually was working in Shanghai. When I came back to Hong Kong, I took some time off. I was helping out my family, my sister with her business, and also my uncle a little bit to do a few furniture sourcing trip in Europe. So just exploring different directions. And then I met my co-founding partners. And it was over drinks that Katie, my chef partner, was very passionate about sandwiches. And she wanted to do an awesome sandwich brand in Hong Kong. At that time, there weren't really very good sandwiches in Hong Kong. One of the most convincing points she said was that our understanding of sandwiches was just tan da hanzi, which is basically spam, egg, and white bread. Very basic stuff. And the way that Hong Kong people perceive sandwiches is a fast food. You would only grab it for its convenience rather than for its quality. So we wanted to change that because all of us actually came back from abroad. There were four of us. Two came back from Canada and two of us lived in the US for a bit. So we've seen that sandwiches could be exciting. We wanted to prove to people that sandwiches can be as sophisticated as a plated dish, only that it's sandwiched between two slices of bread, so it's portable, it's more casual. So the first thing that we did was to sign up for a pop-up at Tongchang Street Market. Back then it was still called the Island East Market, one of the first weekend farmers market that happened in Hong Kong. The thing that made it a lot easier for us to start than, say, for most people was that my sister happened to be also in the F&B industry. So she has a central kitchen already. So there was a facility that we could just use for free.
Shifting gears back a little bit to the transition from Unilever to Bread and Beast, when did you decide was the right time for you to leave your corporate job?
So I first joined Unilever in New York, worked there for a year and a half, and then I transferred to Shanghai. I only stayed there for half a year, I think. 3 months into my Shanghai, I was already thinking about leaving. It was a surprisingly big culture shock for me working in Shanghai. Even though it's the same company, the processes, the culture cannot be more different. I think one thing about working in Unilever, I learned a lot. I loved many parts of it, but one thing that I found missing was I wasn't passionate about the product. So I was working on Dove, the soap brand. Even when I was in the States, whenever everything was working really well, I'm learning a great deal. The product wasn't something that I could get very excited about. And that, I think, is the biggest contrast with doing Bread and Beast. Finding passion and belief in the product that we're offering to the customers was a huge difference.
So when you left, did you think about, were you like, oh, okay, I definitely want to start my own thing? Or was it more like, oh, okay, like I'll take some time off and then go reapply for jobs later on?
Yeah, the latter. So I was thinking about reapplying.
Oh, okay, got it. And then I guess this idea happened and you found passion in it.
It's like a slippery slope because when we first started Bread and Beast, it was very light commitment. We didn't have a shop. We're only doing pop-ups, and say Tongchang Street Market, we did it for 2 weekends. So the weekdays I was completely free. I was still helping out my sister with an e-commerce site for her at the time. So it wasn't a full-time commitment. So for the whole entire of the first year, we're just doing pop-ups and catering jobs. And then it was only until a year later that we decided to open the shop, which then became a full-time commitment.
Okay. How did you decide to, I guess, open an actual store? So you mentioned that it was like a slippery slope, like you were doing it like on weekends and during the day, or like during the week you would be working and helping out your sister on her e-commerce business.
Yeah.
How did that transition? Like, how did it go from like, okay, just working weekends in street markets to like full time, I'm committed to this, I am starting Bread and Bees?
I think it was a gut feeling. And what I mean by gut feeling was that at that time, the brand was garnering traction. We're getting more followers. During our interaction with customers at pop-ups, we're hearing a lot of, hey, like, where's your restaurant? Like, we'd love to come to your restaurant. And then we felt like we were missing out on a lot of opportunities because we didn't have a brick and mortar. And we felt like everything was going well enough in terms of brand awareness. I think we were pretty trendy back then, and we were garnering a lot of interest from people. We're comparing ourselves to a few other similar style restaurants that started off doing pop-ups and then later on opened brick and mortar and was very successful. Following basically that kind of route, we decided that the logical next step was to open a restaurant.
How did you know how to start a restaurant? Like, how did you find a space? How did you negotiate rent? How did you buy like kitchen equipment? How do you know like what's food suppliers to go talk to? How did all of that happen?
Katie and Louis, they've worked in restaurants before, so I relied on them on everything that's kitchen related, suppliers, equipment, kitchen layout, design. We couldn't afford having a kitchen consultant to design the kitchen, and thankfully they didn't ask for it anyways. We're trying to keep it as lean as possible. And then with everything else, contractor, I think, benefited from family resources because my sister is an interior designer. So we asked her for some help with the design, and then she introduced her contractor that she's worked with before to help us out. I think it was really fun because the whole team came together, misguided confidence and thinking about how hard could this be, and we just decided to do it ourselves completely. Along the way, we just use common sense to guide us, comparing like different contractors, getting quotations, comparing different suppliers, and trying to find like the best quality at the cheapest price. Cold calling like different, say like for POS, okay, none of us have experience. We just basically called up like a bunch of POS suppliers and get them to explain to us how it works and learn along the way. We definitely made a lot of mistakes, and we paid for those mistakes, but it was a fun learning process.
How did you spend the next couple of years growing Bread and Bees? Was it a whole new, excuse my pun, a whole new beast to deal with that was very different from the pop-up that you were running previously?
100%. It was only until we opened the restaurant that we finally understood how misguided we were in thinking that this would be very simple, how we have mistakenly ignored all the warnings that people have given us before we opened the restaurant.
What were some of the warnings that you guys ignored?
Well, that it would take a lot of time. Like you have to be very hands-on. Before I opened the restaurant, I was misguided in thinking that how hands-on it would be. It's a simple operation. Like I've done so many pop-ups. I have no S&D background. I could do it. So purely we can train someone to do it. It's standard. And my chef partners have agreed to be fully operational and basically taking on all the operation side of things since day one. So how hard could it be? I'm just basically helping to set up the restaurant at the beginning and also doing the marketing. And then I kind of thought I could be fairly hands-off, but it turned out to not be the case. First, our first partner left, I think, right around when we signed on the lease to open this restaurant. So she was previously helping out with all the operations. When she told us that she couldn't commit herself to being full-time doing operations, that left a gap in the team. And so we had to find someone else to take over her role. And then I also thought it might be a good idea for me to get very hands-on and learn the ins and outs of a restaurant, so that even though I wasn't planning to be there every day, I would still know how everything works. And then it just kind of sucked me into a position that I just kept doing it without ever being able to leave the position of operations.
So throughout your process with Bread and Beast, I know that you've had, I guess, like iterated the product a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about, Kong, some of the new businesses that you moved into, and actually, like, how did you decide, okay, Bread and Beast, I need to expand into Kong, I need to expand into white lemon, and eventually to black garlic?
Oh, that's a great question. So if I look at the journey of Bread and Beast, in the beginning when the co-founding partners were all together, we had so much passion and belief in sandwiches, I think because of Katie. So when in 2017, Katie was the last partner to leave the company. When Katie is gone, we realized we couldn't really continue the brand the same way as we had. We are really missing the soul of the brand. So we kept running, and then in end of 2017, we came across a customer who is a F&B consultant from Australia, and she extended us an invite to do a pop-up in Melbourne for 3 months. And so that's actually the second time we did an overseas gig with Bread and Beast. But Melbourne was a pretty critical point in the journey of Bread and Beast, in that 3-month pop-up, at a new food hall called Hawker, we realized that we don't necessarily need to stick with sandwiches. We found that like the exciting part of our brand is actually the way that we play and twist with flavors inspired by Hong Kong ingredients, sauces, and all that. So coming back to Hong Kong, discussed with my manager, Justin, then whether we should pivot and try to do something that is not sandwich related. The concept will be built around Hong Kong heritage, Hong Kong flavors. How do we modernize it, make it fun, make it interactive, make it such that people from around the world would think of it, oh, this is a new type of Hong Kong cuisine. Justin later became my partner as well. So that was the birth of Kong. We did a bunch of small plates, sharing plates, based on Hong Kong flavors. Our signature dish was a Chung Yao Bang, a scallion pancake with dips. So the idea was that when we go into a nice Italian restaurant, they always give you a bread basket with some olive oil and balsamic vinegar, and that really warms you in. We wanted to do something similar with a Chinese bread being scallion pancake, and then we created dips. So instead of garlic butter, we had a black garlic aioli. And then we did a chicken liver pate with a Chinese yellow wine and goji jelly on top. And then another signature dish was a cheesy crab chang fan, which was inspired by mac and cheese. But instead of macaroni, we used a Chinese steamed rice roll. We sear it so that it's crispy on the outside and it's so very fluffy and soft on the inside. And then the cheese sauce we mixed in XO sauce, and then some crab roll, garlic, crispy garlic, to make it beautiful.
Okay, tell me a little bit more about your expansion to white lemon and black garlic as well.
So white lemon came about in 2018, around April. It all happened because a customer, Ava and Ernest, were actually they're gym owners in the neighborhood. So they frequent Bread and Beast a lot. And one time we were chatting about our central kitchen in Chinwan, and then he asked if we would be interested in making their meal plan. So I looked at the menu and it seemed to be something that we could do. No experience in doing gym meals, not even experience in consuming gym meals, meal plans myself. So it's completely new to me. But I looked at the recipe, it seemed like something that we could give it a try. So that was really what kickstarted this catering line for gyms. Junwan is the kitchen, the central kitchen that we first started. So it's my sister's central kitchen. I was basically borrowing her space to do this. And then I thought it was a pretty good business to run. After we tried it for like a month or two, I was thinking we should expand on this. And the reason of that was because Chunwan was mainly used to do catering, event catering, like canopy style catering, which is very seasonal. So during like the fashion seasons, there'd be a lot of events. During the art month, there'd be a lot of events, and you would see your sales peak. And then sometimes like you would have like 3 or 4 events one day, and then there could be weeks when you got zero job and there's nothing happening in the kitchen. So the workload is very unstable. So I thought the gym business was a great way to kind of stabilize the workload and business for the central kitchen. Anyhow, so then I had another friend who also started a gym meal plan, and he was looking to leave Hong Kong. So I approached him to discuss about taking over the business for him. So that happened, and that actually became too much for the central kitchen team in Chunwan. So my sister and I chatted. She decided that she wasn't really interested in doing fitness meal plans. That's not what she's passionate about. So she asked me if I wanted to continue, I should find a new space for it and just do it properly or not. So then that prompted me to find a kitchen elsewhere, and we found a space in Wangzhouhan and started a whole new business.
And eventually, you also just opened Black Garlic. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so Black Garlic was the Asian line that spawned out from the kitchen of White Lemon in Wangzhouhan. We wanted to do a home style rice bowl concept. We backtrack a little bit. So after taking on the space in Wangzhouhan, we were already thinking about, okay, so it's a huge space, much bigger than what we needed. I guess I was being a little aggressive in thinking that, okay, so we already have a pretty good base sales with just like 2 gyms. If I could sign on like a couple more gyms, then we could make a lot of money. Meanwhile, my partner and I also want to launch a brand that of our own, because doing these gym meals, we're pretty much doing it OEM style, white label style. So it's under the gym's brand and name, and we just basically are a supplier partner. Black Garlic, we landed on this name, and we first launched it on this platform called Plum. Plum is a very interesting platform. The idea is a combination of like a delivery business with a Groupon model. So 2 things that are different from, say, Deliveroo and Food Panda. One is that there are only very limited offerings each day, but by consolidating all your orders into a few restaurants or on a few dishes, they're able to get a group buy discount. And then secondly, they eliminated the last mile delivery. So instead of bringing it door to door, they only deliver to certain dispatch points in office dense areas. So you would have to go down and pick it up yourself. But both of these are massively cost saving. And so for customers who want a good deal and don't mind walking down their office for a couple of minutes, they get a great deal out of it. So we start partnering with Plum. I remember our goal was quite lofty. We are going to do 1,000 meals a day. But over the course of, I think, 9 months of working together, it never reached over 200, 250. Eventually, Plum overexpanded and currently is no longer in operations. So then we had to find a new channel for Black Garlic. And about the same time, Deliveroo reached out and offered us a spot in their Dishes Kitchen. Dishes Kitchen are cloud kitchens and also serve as dispatch points. So one side of the site would be actual kitchen. People are cooking made to order style, and then the other side of the kitchen is basically storage space for chilled meals, pre-made chilled meals that are microwavable. So we were in that space. So we would make all these meal boxes and then send it over to be sold through their channels. And then we realized that there is a lot of limitations with this kind of operation. Quality was hard to reach the point that we're satisfied. So the third iteration came, which is let's do a brick and mortar. And it was during December. So towards the end of last year's protests, we found a spot that was empty in PP3, and then we approached Swan and asked if it's still available. We pitched our concept. So on that same floor, there's a prep and there's a salad stop. So when we pitched them the idea of there are two healthy Western grab and go concepts, our concept is Asian, still healthy, but it's hot food. So I think that would provide and add like a nice mix to the tenants and offerings on that level. We're very fortunate to get the space, but it was a very snap decision as well. Like they got back to us really quick. So they asked for a proposal really quick after they told us it's available, and then we just whipped something up, and then they got back to us really quick. We had to commit to the spot, I think, in a couple of days' time after they notified us that.
So out of these four businesses, which one is the one that has been doing the best?
I think Kong was doing the best. Even though it was quite short living, I think it reached an unexpected level pretty quick. I would say the whole launch of Kong was very, very reckless. I don't think we had a proper gauge of our team, what our strengths are and what we're capable of doing. It was just an idea that my partner and I thought was awesome that we should do, but neither my partner nor I are the chefs. So we just kind of jumped into it.
Okay, why did you think that Kong was the one that did the best out of all the other restaurants?
We thought Kong was original on its entire concept. At that time, we started doing cocktails with Chinese spirits. We started bastardizing mac and cheese. And we started to become a little bit more philosophical and wanting to prompt questions to our customers while you're enjoying the food. Chinese noodles, local noodles, wonton noodles, beef brisket noodles. It doesn't matter how amazing it is. It's priced very cheaply. It's like $40, $50 max. I've had really, really average pastas that starts at like $100, and really good pastas in Hong Kong cost a fortune. Like it goes up to like $400 or $500. Why is that? Why is that? Like local food is so cheaply priced, and then pastas, I think any Italian would find to be bastardized version of Italian pasta can cost so much more. So, for example, we would create dishes that lies in the gray area. Is this noodles or is this pasta? But we charge the price of a pasta, obviously. And then we started creating. Why is cocktail so expensive? I don't understand. Okay, why is Chinese dessert so cheap? Okay, so we created Chinese dessert cocktails like a mango pomelo with coconut rum. So is that a dessert or is that a cocktail? But obviously, we charge you the price of a cocktail. Yeah, so there are a lot of questions that we wanted to push our customers to think about. We wanted people to appreciate Hong Kong's culture and not just blindly go for the most exotic, like imported experience.
Very interesting. So you were able to make much better, like much higher margins with Kong than you would with other.
So sorry. I think I consider it a success because that people appreciated the food, the flavor and the taste of the food. It was a financial success pre-COVID, and we were also able to drive that message, and we felt like we were contributing to the culinary scene in Hong Kong. We're trying to change the way people think and perceive local food versus Western or foreign food.
Got it. Okay. I know you recently decided to close down Bread and Beast and also Kong after 6 years of being in business. That must not have been an easy decision. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so it's been an interesting 9 months. Actually, the whole year already. So it started in June. Hong Kong was experiencing some social unrest. It really started hitting us in August when the protests got more frequent and more severe. So our weekend bunches started to take a big hit. Our nighttime business was also taking a hit. And being in Wan Chai, I never realized that we're so close to so many government buildings. We were actually just 1 minute away from South Dock, which is one of the gathering points for the protests or for the rallies. We have the police headquarters. We have the LegCo and a couple other government buildings very close to us, High Court as well. Starting August, it starts to really affect us severely. And then actually towards December, we saw a rebound finally. So it was Christmas time, and business was starting to pick up. And then we're all hopeful and optimistic about our business again. And then COVID hit in late January. It was actually a lot worse than the protests. And it was a lot worse than the protests because it affected every single stream of our business. So aside from the shop, we also have a catering arm. And then, as I mentioned, we also do pop-ups. We kind of designed our business to be to level out, to even out during different months of the year, because restaurant business alone is seasonal as well. For example, like Christmas would be a peak season, and then January when you have New Year, like people tends to eat out less because they overspend at the year end. And then February was also a low month because it's Chinese New Year and people go to Chinese restaurants rather than Western restaurants. We had these things in mind, and we try to launch products and services that would counter these cycles for us. And then March is Art Month, so traditionally we would do a pop-up at Art Central, and then immediately in April we would do a pop-up at Rugby Sevens as well. But all the events were cancelled, so those revenue streams were completely wiped out. The past half a year have been really difficult to operate, simply because when there's so much uncertainty with the COVID situation, so much uncertainty with government regulations, so much uncertainty with business sales, we have to take all kinds of measures to lower our overhead. And that just makes maintaining your business and your standard, your quality of food and service very, very difficult.
So from an overhead perspective, it makes sense to close down Bread and Beast as that was the highest cost out of all the other concepts that you had.
Exactly. Towards the end, we had very few full times. We're running mostly with part times because that gives us the most flexibility in scheduling. Like once you have more staff, so when you're on Fridays, would still be busy, so like more Friday staff, part time on Fridays. Without full times, you don't have much stability within the team. It's hard to provide the same level of products and service.
Would you do this all over again? You know, knowing all of this and how this all turned out, would you do all of this again? Or would you have stuck with a corporate job? And I guess like from this process, what would you have done differently now that you have been able to see everything that's happened in the last couple of years?
That's a tough question because the way I see it is there are always pros and cons with everything. Even with people I work with, I hire, like there are always pros and cons. Like no one's perfect, no decision is perfect. So I wouldn't think too much about if I were to do it all over again, would I have done it differently? Moving forward, continuing my career, I actually think I would make F&B more of a passion project than to have to rely on it for a living. I think F&B is inherently a very tough business to make money, and increasingly becoming more and more competitive because customers are quite fickle, and then B, the entry barrier is quite low. And right now, I think the entry barrier is lower than ever because rent has come down. It's a very unpredictable kind of business. In order to make it a financial success, I think that there's a lot of pressure on you to make compromises, to do what customers want rather than like what you believe is good. So I think it's better that for me, I want to keep it as a passion project and not to have to worry too much about the financial pressure. The financial pressure just changes the nature of what you do because I didn't start out doing this out of a desire to become a billionaire. I started because I'm passionate about it. And I think over time, over the past year, like I had to make a lot of decisions that I wouldn't want to make because of the financial burden and pressure.
I wanted to go back to you quickly about passion versus finances. So for you, do you know how in like the Western world, everybody's like, oh, follow your dreams and then eventually the money will come. Do you agree with that statement? Or do you think that through you pursuing your passion, you actually had to give up a lot of financial upside?
I think in Hong Kong, it's like this. Someone once told me about this pop singer in Hong Kong called Eason, who's regarded as like the god of like Canto pop. Basically, a reference to him saying that, look, even if you're as good as Eason Chan, when he first started his career, he had to sing all kinds of pop songs that he probably hated himself. But once he has reached that god-like status and level, then it doesn't matter what he sings. He can sing whatever he wants to sing, and then people will still buy into it. In that sense, I felt like it does apply to a lot of industries in Hong Kong, especially the non-mainstream ones. You need to build a name, attraction for yourself by doing things that people want. And then once you reach a certain level, then you can become an artist.
That's a really great point and a really great way to conclude our very first podcast. So thank you, Chris, for all your time and all your insights. This has been really generous of you to share your story, your insights, and your advice. So thank you so much for your time. And we wish you all the best in your future ventures.